Midnight. A cry tears through the silence of the night. The bridegroom is here. Come out to meet him. 5 young women jolt awake from sleep, reaching for their torches. And their hearts sink. The flame is dying. Only a few faint flickers remain, about to dissolve into the dark. The night has been longer than they expected, and now, at the most important moment of all, they don't have enough left to keep the fire burning. In a panic, they turn to the friends standing right beside them, the women whose flames are still blazing, whose vessels are still full of oil. And they cry out with a plea that is so deeply human. Give us a little of your oil, our torches are going out. A reasonable request, desperate, among people who were supposed to belong to the same party, and the answer they receive is a single word: no. The first time I read this far, I felt something uncomfortable twist inside me. Maybe you have too, because those 5 women who refused are the very ones Scripture calls wise, yet what they just did doesn't look wise at all. It looks like selfishness. It looks like coldness. It looks like the very last thing you'd expect to find in a teaching from Jesus, about love, about waiting, about being ready for one another. We've always been taught to give, to share, to make room for the one who has nothing. And yet here, right in the middle of a story, Jesus himself is telling, the ones called wise do the opposite, and they're still called wise. For years, I just skimmed past this detail, quietly blaming the 5 wise women in my heart. I'd read through it fast, a little annoyed, and move on. Until one day I forced myself to stop for a long while and ask a completely different question. What if that refusal wasn't cruelty at all? What if that single word, no, instead of being an ugly crack in the story, was actually the most honest thing in it? And strangely, the most loving thing in the entire parable. That's the question that will completely change how you read Matthew 25. Because once you understand what the 5 wise women were truly refusing, and why they couldn't have done otherwise, you will never see this story, or your own life of faith, the same way again. To understand why that refusal matters so much, we first need to know where those 5 young women were standing, and what they were waiting for. In the Jewish world of Jesus' day, a wedding wasn't contained in a single evening. It was an entire process. After the betrothal, the bridegroom would return to his father's house to prepare a place for his bride. Then one day, with no one knowing exactly when, he would come back to collect her. And here is the detail that makes everything so tense. No one announced the time. It was the bridegroom's father who decided when everything was ready. So those in the wedding party had to wait. They knew the season. They knew roughly when. But that specific night was always a surprise. And almost always, the bridegroom came at night. Picture the job of these 5 young women. Their task was simple. When the bridegroom appeared, they had to be holding fire, ready to join the procession, lighting the way that led him into the feast. The flame in their hands wasn't just to see by. It was the ticket. It was the declaration. I belong to this wedding. I have waited for this moment. Now we come to the detail most of us read right past without ever stopping. All 10 young women were identical. Read these sentences slowly. All 10 were invited. All 10 were present. All 10 carried torches. All 10 walked out on the same night, wearing the same kind of clothing, carrying the same joyful expectation. And then, this is what Matthew says so plainly. All 10 fell asleep. Notice this because it matters more than you'd think. The story doesn't condemn the sleep at all. Not a single word of blame for closing their eyes. The night was long, the waiting was wearisome, and drowsiness came for everyone alike. The wise slept. The foolish slept. If you're looking for the difference between the 2 groups here, you won't find it. That's what makes this parable quietly terrifying. Through all those months of waiting, through all those dull hours that passed, no one could tell who was wise and who was foolish. They looked the same. They behaved the same. They even failed the same way. Every one of them dropped off to sleep. Until the cry at midnight, just one moment, just one single request, give us a little of your oil, and suddenly the invisible line that had been there all along became sharply visible. The difference wasn't in who they were, and it wasn't in what they did while waiting. It was in something quiet they had carried, or had failed to carry, long before night fell. And now, we have to face the hardest question of all. Put yourself in the place of the 5 wise women. It's midnight, your friends are panicking, their torches are going out, they're reaching out their hands and begging. What would you do? Almost all of us know the answer we want to hear. Of course you'd share. Of course you'd split it in half. That's what a good person would do, and yet the very one Scripture praises as wise said no. They weren't bad people. They didn't hate the others at all, but they still refused. And Jesus, the one telling this story, puts no word of rebuke in their mouths. He lets that refusal stand there, bare, with no explanation. Why? Why would an act that looks exactly like selfishness be told without a single word of condemnation? The answer lies in the very nature of what they were being asked for. Something that not even the greatest love on earth can pour from one vessel into another. 3. So what is the oil, really? Why is it something that cannot be given away? Let's start with something simple that we often forget. In life, there are two completely different kinds of things. The first kind is things that can be transferred. I can hand you my money. I can share the food in my bag with you. I can lend you my coat, tell you what I know, give you a few hours of my day. These things move. They leave my hands and pass into yours, fully intact. You don't have to earn them yourself. I give, and you have. But there's a second kind, and this is the kind the entire story revolves around. It's the things that can only be built up within you. No one can eat for you so that you feel full. No one can sleep in your place so that you wake up rested. No one can exercise on your behalf and then transfer the muscle into your body. There are things that, no matter how much the other person loves you, no matter how willing they are, simply cannot be handed over, because by their very nature they have to be formed from the inside over time by you yourself. And the oil, in this parable, belongs to that second kind. To see this clearly, look at how oil worked in the religious life of Israel itself. In the temple, the priests had a sacred duty. They had to keep the lamp before the Lord burning continually, never going out. But here's the striking part. They didn't fill it once and walk away. Every evening they came back, trimmed the wick, poured in fresh oil, checked the flame, night after night without stopping. That flame did not sustain itself. It burned because of a steady stream of oil poured in faithfully, quietly, every single day. Stop pouring and the fire goes out. It's as simple as that. Now connect that back to the 5 wise women. They didn't just fill their torches once and rest easy. They carried extra oil in their own vessels. They understood something the other 5 did not. That fire doesn't sustain itself. That the night could run longer than expected. That the thing which keeps a flame alive has to be prepared ahead of time, little by little, in the hours when nothing is happening. And here is the moment that made me stop for a very long time. The oil in that vessel doesn't represent a gift you can hand over. It represents something that only grows inside a person over time. It's the depth you build in silence. It's the personal relationship with God you nurture in the days when no one is watching. It's something formed by 10,000 small, quiet choices that no one ever applauds. And once you understand that, the refusal appears in a completely different light. When the 5 wise women said no, they weren't saying, "I don't want to give it to you." They were saying something far deeper and far more painful. They were saying, "This cannot be given." That wasn't stinginess, that was the truth. Think about it carefully. Did the 5 wise women truly want to share? Of course they did. Do you think they were glad to watch their friends left outside the door? Not at all. But they stood before a hard truth that no kind words could erase. What their friends were missing wasn't something you could borrow for a single night. It was the result of an entire process that only that person could walk. And that process, sadly, had not happened. It's just like how you can't borrow someone else's health on the very night your own body breaks down. You can't borrow someone else's years of discipline to pass an exam you never studied for. You can't borrow someone else's hard-earned courage to face the defining moment of your life. There are things that, when you need them most, you have only exactly what you have quietly built up, nothing more. And the 5 wise women, no matter how much they loved their friends, could not change that truth. Their no was simply honest about something we all wish weren't true. But if that refusal was honest, how could it possibly also be loving? For now, let's try to imagine a different scenario, one that sounds far kinder. It's midnight, the cry rings out, the 5 women panic and reach out their hands for oil. And this time the 5 wise women smile and say, "Sure, don't worry. Let us share with you." They pour their oil into your vessels. They all walk out into the night together, 10 torches burning at once, no one left behind. A beautiful ending, right? Except for one thing. If there was only ever enough oil for 5, then when it's split among all 10, Not a single flame has enough strength to burn to the end of the road. The procession is long, the road is far, and somewhere along the way, one torch after another would flicker out until all 10 sank into darkness, and not one of them reached the wedding feast. That is the real outcome of kindness in the wrong place. That warm-sounding yes would not have saved the 5 women. It would only have dragged 5 more down into the pit with them. A false promise, even one spoken from good intentions, still leads to the same place, just with more people in it. And here is something I want you to pause and feel. Sometimes an honest refusal is kinder than a dishonest yes. A truthful no can be a greater gift than a yes that both sides know can't be kept. Think about this in your own life. Picture a friend about to walk into the most important exam of their life, but who hasn't opened a book all semester. The night before the exam, they come to you, the one who has worked hard for months, and say, "You've studied. Can I borrow your head for one night? Just cram everything you know into me." You love that person. You genuinely want to help. But you know an undeniable truth. Knowledge doesn't work that way. Understanding can't be poured from one head into another in a single night. It's built brick by brick, through every quiet hour the other person chose to spend somewhere else. The best thing you can do for them isn't a last-minute miracle. It's honesty. It's saying it straight. I can't give you this. It's something you have to walk through yourself. It sounds harsh, but that's love wearing the shape of truth. And now, notice a detail I missed for years. That refusal didn't come from the bridegroom. Read it again carefully. The bridegroom isn't the one who says no. He hasn't even appeared yet in that moment. The ones who speak the word no are the women standing beside them, their companions, their friends who waited alongside them. And that points to a truth that left me speechless. The hard truth about that oil you can't borrow. We usually hear it as a stern warning thundering down from above. But Jesus doesn't tell it that way. He places that truth in the mouths of people who are our equals, friends speaking to friends, those who waited speaking to those who waited, as if he were saying, "This isn't a rule I'm imposing on you. This is simply how things work. Even the people who love you most cannot change this for you." And maybe that's the most frightening thing, and at the very same time the most freeing thing in the entire story. Frightening, because it means no one can rescue you at the last minute from an inner life you never cultivated. No morally good friend, no pastor, no sacred relationship can pour their faith into your vessel, but freeing too. Because if no one can give you that thing, then the opposite is also true. No one can take it from you. The oil you quietly built up in the hours no one saw is your own, and it cannot be seized, and it depends on no one else. Only one question remains. Are you filling it? 5, maybe you've been in that midnight moment yourself, not in a parable, in your own life. That moment when everything suddenly comes crashing down at once, a loss, a shock, a piece of devastating news. And you reach for your faith, reach for your strength, only to discover that the vessel inside you is nearly empty. You still go to church, you still know the right answers. From the outside, your torch looks just fine, but when the real storm hits, you find you have hardly any oil left to burn. I've been in that moment, and what made it so lonely was the very truth we just talked about. No one could step in and live that part for me. No one could lend me a faith I had never built for myself. It sounds harsh, but turn it over one more time, because the other side of that truth is exactly where the hope lies. If that oil can only be gathered little by little, in the ordinary hours, then it also means you can begin right now. You don't need a dramatic moment. You don't need an explosive religious experience. All it takes is the quiet faithfulness the priests practiced every evening. Coming back, pouring in a little more, keeping the flame from going out. And here is the most tender thing I found in the entire story. Jesus told this parable before midnight ever came. Think about that. He didn't tell it after the door had already shut, as a rebuke aimed at those who were too late. He told it before, while there was still daylight, while there was still time to check your vessel. This whole story, including that uncomfortable refusal, is a gift handed to you while there's still time. It's a warning that comes from love, not a sentence read aloud when it's already too late. And once you see that, the 5 wise women look very different. They aren't cold saints standing there watching their friends suffer with smug satisfaction. Picture them as real people. Maybe they too once had a night when the fire nearly went out. Maybe there was a time they learned the bitter lesson of a night that ran longer than expected. And so this time they quietly prepared. Not because they were anxious or afraid, but because they were honest about the nature of the night. They knew fire doesn't burn forever on its own. They knew the waiting could stretch on. So they carried more than the bare minimum. That isn't the wisdom of being smarter. It's the wisdom of being humbler. Because what truly separates the two groups isn't intelligence. It's a quiet confession. The 5 wise women, at some moment long before midnight, looked at the torch in their hands and said, "I'm going to need more than this. The flame I'm holding can't sustain itself." The other 5 assumed that what they had was enough, that the night wouldn't run that long, that everything would unfold right on their schedule. And maybe that humble confession is the real beginning of wisdom. Not a blazing moment of conversion, but a very small sentence repeated every single day. I need more than what I have in myself. I need to be filled again, today and tomorrow too. That's the thing you can't borrow from anyone. But it's also the thing always ready to be given to you, if you'll just hold out your vessel and receive it. The refusal of the 5 wise women, it turns out, didn't close any door at all. It only pointed to a different door, the one that only you can walk through yourself. 6. So if there's one thing you carry away from this story, let it be this. The most loving no you've ever heard might be the very one that forces you to go find your own oil before midnight comes knocking. The real question was never, who will rescue me at the last minute? It's a far quieter one, asked over and over in the ordinary days no one pays attention to. Today, what am I filling my vessel with? Because the person you'll become at the midnight moment, is shaped long before the cry ever rings out. And here's something I'm still pondering. The 5 wise women did nothing extraordinary. They were simply honest about the nature of the night. Maybe all true humility really needs is the courage to say, I need more than what I have, and then to hold out your vessel every day. So what about you? Tell me in the comments, have you ever been in that out of oil moment? And what helped you fill your flame back up? I genuinely want to hear, because I believe your story might be the very bit of light someone else needs tonight. If this touched you, share it with someone you think needs to hear it. And subscribe, so that together we can keep stopping at the details we've spent our whole lives reading right past. Because sometimes the hardest no to hear is the most loving call of all.